watching Arise and Shine, and we're almost better than breakfast.
From New York to Sydney, San Francisco to Lebanon, and all throughout Africa, Luca Babini has used his camera to raise awareness and document some of the most important global issues in the world. Welcome, Luca.
Welcome.
Thank
Benvenuto.
you. Benvenuto. Yes, exactly. Good morning, ladies. How are you?
Good morning. Good. So how long have you been working as a philanthropic photographer?
It's the first time I've been called that.
Well
yeah. On and off for like the last 15 years.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I guess you can call it a philanthropic photographer because you are raising awareness about so many important issues around the world. I know one of the projects you worked on was called the Plastiki Project, and that is an important issue in the environmental activism community. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Plastiki is a sailboat, a catamaran, 65 feet long, floating on 12,000 plastic bottles. And you can see a picture here is while he's leaving San Francisco. Mm-hmm. The project is the brainchild of David the Rothschild, of the Rothschild family from England, and he is a very young and very ambitious environmentalist. And he has a problem with plastic garbage. Very few people know, maybe more people know now that Plastiki went on its mission, that there is a garbage patch of floating plastic the size of Texas in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
And the ocean has a very hard time, obviously, processing plastic. And so David decided to make this boat, which is not just floating on plastic bottle, but every single bit of it is made of some recycled material.
So it's symbolic of what's going on in the ocean.
Symbolic of what's going on.
I mean, why this might sound like a silly question, but why is it bad that there's so much plastic in the ocean?
Well, because it obviously unsettles the balance of nature in the ocean. For one thing, this plastic doesn't really float because the ocean breaks it into pellets, and it sits a few feet below the surface, hence the water cannot cool itself. So it creates a large area of water which is warmer than it's supposed to be. Fish have a problem.
Right. Is that part of, do you think, a part of the migration lately, too, of our sea life? Do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think, all these things, like, plastic is a big problem.
Absolutely.
I mean, there is a lot of people, a lot of towns, a lot of people are very active in trying to reduce our plastic consumption, and we should really do that.
What was your most memorable part of working on this project for you?
Sleeping outside in a rubber boat and just looking at the universe at night. Yeah, that was fantastic.
That must have been beautiful.
Beautiful. And also how your mind, once you are away from Wi-Fi waves, Bluetooth and cell phones and everything, you are so sharp. Yeah.
Your observation skills must get more acute.
I mean, it's crazy. It's like you actually start thinking, because we think, but I think we forgot how to think.
So I know another project that you've worked on extensively is the Syrian refugee situation in Lebanon. And we're seeing some beautiful pictures on this wall behind us of some of the Syrian refugees. And I also believe it's interesting to see the contrast, too, between the high fashion models in the same area, very in close proximity to these people who are living in horrific conditions. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I believe right now the number is up to 1.5 million refugees in Lebanon, which is, in a country of 4 million people, you can imagine the impact of that on everything. In the very beginning, it was unexpected, so the Lebanese government had not a bad reaction, but they didn't want to repeat the Palestinian camps that became then cities within cities. So they didn't allow for settlements or building houses or anything like that, which put the United Nations organizations in a difficult condition because they couldn't officially build anything for these people. So what the Syrians did, as they came across the border, they went to farmers. They gave them a little rent for their land, and then they went to look for anything they could use as building materials, hence billboards, which is like striking. So you have like these huge Coca-Cola houses or almost works of art.
So how does this affect the Lebanese culturally?
Well, it affected them tremendously because Lebanon already has a very interesting ethnic and religious mix. I think they have like 17 religious minorities, don't quote me on that, but close to that, represented in the government. So this added yet another group of people that, and also jobs. That's a big problem because the Syrians obviously are displaced, so they're ready to accept any kind of job.
Right.
And so
it's almost mimicking what we have going on in the United States a little bit in terms of like
immigration.
How people come in. Like there's people willing to take the jobs that other people aren't. But this is, they're displaced. That's
of course, but we have to think it would be as if all of a sudden 6 million people showed up in New York and looked for jobs. So the
proportions, absolutely.
It's crazy.
And so are there any funds or provisions that are supporting these people?
The United Nations estimated that they need $2 billion to do something about the problem. I think they've only received like less than 300 million in donations. And I think this is because of the perception that Lebanon, has Hezbollah, the government. The United States considers Hezbollah a terrorist organization. So does Israel. And so people, I think, that don't have a hard time understanding that they're not sending money to a terrorist country.
Right.
And but if you make a donation to UNICEF or any United Nations organizations which is involved with the refugee, then you're doing the right thing. And please do.
You kind of touched on this, and Rain sort of asked you about the cultural implications of having all these Syrian refugees in Lebanon. But tell us a little bit more about the Sunnis and the Shiites and the Kurdish state and how all of that plays a role in what's going on in Lebanon.
Well, I mean, yes. Well, you have also, this is very difficult to understand, but sometimes, you have Sunni coming into a Shia area and they settle there, so that creates friction, religious frictions. And it's a little bit what is happening, I believe, in Iraq right now, that what we're seeing the creation of a Kurdish state, which people sort of like started talking about before the Syrian war, that the Kurdish were pushing for that. And then, ISIS, they're talking about a caliphate. But, unfortunately, this is something that comes from way back in history. And what we're seeing Iraq basically split into major, religious factions, the Shias and the Shiite and the Sunni. And, in Lebanon, these balances are very delicate. And so in a scenario where they're kind of managing to do this miracle where all these different religions are living together, boom, all of a sudden you have 1.5 million people, some of them are Palestinian, Just yesterday, I think the New York Times did a homepage article saying that now the problem, it's coming to the Palestinian refugee camps, which are already overcrowded, and now they have all these Palestinians coming from Syria, and they're settling in the camps.
Well, this is such an interesting conversation, Luca, and you're going to stick around and tell us more, and we're going to keep it going when we come back.
And later, award-winning author Jacqueline Woodson and Barry Schwartz will let us sample his Brooklyn-made tempeh. Yummy, I can't wait. Come back and join us. Good morning, sunshine. Welcome back to Arise and Shine. If you're just joining us, we're right in the middle of a very interesting conversation with photographer Luca Babini.
So you were involved with students, a student-run magazine in Sierra Leone. Can you talk about that with us?
Yes. I went to Sierra Leone the first time, and working for UNICEF, I was helping them to document a malaria prevention campaign and a birth campaign to convince women to give birth in hospitals instead of their villages to decrease the infant mortality rate. And we were in Freetown one afternoon, and somebody from UNICEF came up to me, and they said, we want you to meet this group of young teenagers, and I was like, wow, these kids are so smart. And they are publishing a magazine called Peking News, which I believe it means youth news in Sierra Leonean. And I noticed the magazine had like very few pictures and very bad pictures. So we started this conversation where was telling them, images are very powerful,
right.
Especially nowadays. And I kind of thought, maybe I can help them. And I promised them I would go back and teach them about photography and journalism. So once back, I was back in the States. I think about 6 months later, I gathered a bunch of cameras, a bunch of laptop computers from my friend David de Rothschilds, by the way, who was the Plastiki guy, who also has a foundation called Sculpt the Future. And so, I left with these 2 big trunks full of goodies. And UNICEF helped because what they did, they gave me, they drove me to 3 different villages in the middle of Sierra Leone.
Wow.
And we had this photography and communication workshop, and it was fantastic.
That's amazing. So are these some of the kids behind us that are doing the magazine?
This, I believe, it's in Kono village, or Makeni. Makeni actually is where one of the biggest Ebola wards is in Sierra Leone, which I visited when it was a regular hospital.
Right.
Yeah, these are the kids.
And so is the magazine still running?
I wish I could say yes, but the communication is very, very, very difficult with Sierra Leone, especially now. So I checked a few months back, and the kids are alive and well, and they have a radio station.
Oh, wow.
Yes, they have a radio station now, which is wonderful, yes.
Do you ever get in a place of fear if you enter an area that is, that's either dangerous or...
Are you asking me if I'm scared?
If you get scared covering all of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm very scared.
And how do you handle it?
You don't. You just go along. Yeah, there is something I call the art of being there, which is sort of like a sixth sense that puts you at ease in a place and you try to fit in as much as possible. And then, if it happens, it happens. But,
And I mean, I'm sure you get connected to all the people and all the places that you cover, and for them, this is their daily reality.
Yeah.
So they have to learn to deal with it too, right?
Yeah, they have to. But, people are fantastic.
And that's what I was going to ask. I mean, from covering people all over the world, so many different cultures, what have you learned about people in general, just from having been to so many places?
A huge lesson that the less people have, the more they give, which is incredible. So I walk into mud huts, with people incredibly poor. They sleep on the floor like 10 people. If they have a piece of bread, they will give it to me. Yeah.
And that, and I think that just says a lot about what humanity is and a lot about what goes on in the United States, that we can learn so much
from people.
Do you know what I mean? About just the humanitarianism of the world. The more it's almost like the more you give, the more you receive, but you receive it in different ways. It's not necessarily about stuff.
And talking about America, I have met many, many young Americans that we probably don't know about, that travel the world and work as volunteers with UNICEF, with the Peace Corps, with the United Nations Organization, with a local small NGO in the middle of nowhere, and they just do the good work. They're the field soldiers.
So what's for you next? What are you up to?
I'm trying to get a ride to go to Liberia.
Okay.
Not so much for Ebola, but because there's a very, very famous soccer player, depending who's listening, that wants to become president. And I have a connection with him, and I'm trying to convince him to let me shoot a documentary film, because I think this is very African and it's beautiful. Like a soccer player comes in, and you know how football and soccer are very popular in Africa. So he's like a god.
Right.
And so I think it's going to be an extraordinary experience to film that.
Yeah, I think sports can also unite people across all kinds of cultures.
Absolutely.
One thing we've been talking about a lot, obviously, in recent weeks is the situation in Ferguson, Missouri. And I like to ask all of our guests, because we have such interesting, varied guests. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a tough question. I think that everything that could go wrong went wrong. I think that killing an unarmed man in any situation should never happen. I think that police officers should be very well educated, very well trained, very well paid. Because when you're put in such an extreme situation, if you're not well trained, you may make a mistake. And I think there was a judgment call. There was a mistake. If I'd been in a situation like that, I would have put the car in drive and go.
Right.
and call for enforcement. You know, you're dealing with a very young man that was obviously altered, and that, yes, he was very aggressive, which was wrong on his part.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't justify a loss of life.
Right.
You know, we scold children and young men. We don't kill them. So, and this is unfortunately is happening a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming Officer Wilson, because when you're in a situation like that,
You make split-second
it's fear.
decisions, yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
fear. It's fear, but that's
And a lot
what-
of police officers actually will agree with that. That's what their presumption is. And there's a specific word, and I forget what it is, that they use in the police academy about that kind
Yeah.
of fear. It's almost like a justifiable reaction.
Yes, but I also read that a lot of in many protocols they say to engage.
Right.
And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, and I think the aftermath has been so interesting as well. And I'm sure for you, having traveled so much, to see something like that happening here in the United States has been really fascinating.
I mean, but things have to change. I think that, you know, why is an officer in fear? Because he knows it's so easy to get a gun in this country.
Right.
Yeah.
So hence, you're always thinking this person could be armed.
Right.
So any you know,
Right.
ambiguous movement of anything, you always think the worst.
The worst.
And hence you have a very strong reaction, because it becomes about survival. It's
Right.
either you or them. And I think that this is going to like perpetuate itself, and it's not going to change unless we do some radical changes to, you know, gun laws and training, and
Right.
et cetera.
So how do people, if we want, let's say we want to get involved, we want to get involved with UNICEF, we want to get involved with what's going on in Sierra Leone, or get involved with what's
Lebanon.
going on in Lebanon, how do we do that?
Let me say something very
Yes,
important. I started as a non-believer. I thought all the money we give is going to go in somebody's pockets.
Right.
I'm here to say it's not true. The United Nations have very strong, very precise protocols that at least 70% of the money donated has to get to the field to solve the problems, and sometimes a higher percentage. So they're doing great work. Please donate, because the money goes to the people
Goes
that
to
need
where
the
it's
money.
supposed to be going.
And it's very simple. It's unicef.org.
UNICEF.org. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Luca.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, thank you. It was
inspirational.
fun.
The work that,
Incredible career.
incredible
It was
career.
fun.
The work that you're doing, it touches many lives, and hopefully will be part of changing the world. That's what each one of us should do, is just do our little part to help change the world. If you want to know more about Luca's work, you can go to lucabambini.com or citizensbrooklyn.com. And to donate to these worthy causes, visit unicef.org. And next up, Jacqueline Woodson tells us how to teach kids how to read at any age. And then later, Laurie Danielle Favors drops by to talk about something close to my heart, hair bullying. And if you don't know what it is, then just stick around, look at my hair, and we'll all find out.
And we'll have our first live performance when singer Raina Williams drops by. I'm so excited, so come on back.